So thank you and welcome. My name's Nancie Gunson and I'd like to talk to you today about some work that I've done with my colleagues at Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh. In this paper, we present a conversational agent that acts as the host of a public building and which combines social conversation with task-based dialogue. So first, some background. Conversational agents or spoken dialogue systems have been the topic of research for decades. Much of the work has focused on task-oriented systems, where the aim is for the user to complete a particular task, like booking a flight. And the dialogues are often, in this case, designed to be short and functional. Chatbots, on the other hand, are designed to promote unstructured conversation that is more human-like, and where often there is no goal other than to entertain and engage the user. Largely, however, there remains a division between the two types of system, which is unnatural and artificial given that humans don't make that distinction or that separation. So it seems obvious that to create more engaging interactions with conversational agents, they need to support both types of interaction and be able to switch effortlessly between the two. However, somewhat surprisingly, there's limited empirical evidence on this, which provides the motivation for the research I'm going to present. Intelligent personal assistants like Amazon's Alexa and Samsung's Bixby do give access to both entertainment and task dialogue, but these have to be invoked separately. They're often quite limited in what they can do. And of course, the focus is on known users in the home. Whereas here, the domain of interest is a walk-up and use system in a public building. The Grid building is a multi-purpose teaching and collaborative space at the Heriot-Watt campus in Edinburgh. The agent that we've developed is called Alana and acts as host of the building. It's deployed as a Google action and is based on the social bot Alana, also developed at Heriot-Watt, which was a finalist in the Amazon Alexa Prize in both 2017 and 2018. The social bot Alana can talk on a vast range of topics, ranging from sports to philosophy to the latest news. The system takes its information from various sources, such as Wikipedia and News API, and it has been successfully used as a system core for other conversational AI projects in the past. For Alana at the Grid, we extended the system to include several new task-based functionalities. General building information, such as the opening or closing times, directions to rooms, information on events taking place, and information on available resources, specifically computers. A feature of the system is that after it has answered a building-related question, it advertises both its building-specific and conversational capabilities, with an aside in the sort of form, don't forget, I can also talk about books or movies or this building. So in this way, the user's made aware that the option to chat is available, but the decision on whether or not they choose to do so is up to them. So taking a closer look at the system architecture, Alana is an ensemble of data-driven and rule-based bots, which compete in parallel to try and generate a response to the user's utterance. So at each turn, every bot attempts to produce a reply, and the decision as to which is selected is based on a priority list. So in the case of the Alana Grid system, the new bots that were developed specifically for the building-related information are placed at the top of the priority list. Speech recognition and TTS are handled using Google. Natural language understanding is a combination of the original Alana pipeline and a new RASA module designed specifically to deal with the building-related inquiries. Natural language generation is bot dependent, with, for example, the news bot using summarization techniques. The new grid-specific bots are based on a template-based approach. And a Neo4j graph database is used to represent how the different rooms in the building are connected. So in our evaluation, we wanted to answer the question, what are the benefits, if any, of combining open domain social chat with task-based dialogue in a public setting? And to answer it, we compared two experiment conditions, a task plus chat version, which is the Alana grid system as I've just described, and a task-only version of the system with all social chat removed. We designed a repeated measures experiment so participants experience both versions of the system with the order of exposure balanced across the group. With each version, we asked people to carry out the same set of tasks, and in order to avoid putting the words in their mouth, the tasks were graphically inspired, like the example on the right here for the task, where can I get a coffee? And we collected a range of measures. User attitude was assessed using a Likert questionnaire completed after each interaction and examined issues like enjoyment and engagement. Explicit preference between the two versions of the system is another key measure of overall attitude, and we collected that as part of the debriefing interview. In terms of objective measures, we looked at dialogue quality as measured by task completion rates and conversational efficiency as measured by the number of turns in the interactions and their duration. And based on previous research, we had various expectations. So we predicted that including social chat in the dialogue would improve user attitudes towards the system, and that correspondingly, participants would prefer the combined system. In terms of dialogue quality, we anticipated that the task completion rates would be unaffected. People would still be able to achieve their goal, but that there might be some negative effects on conversational efficiency. So things may take longer. But overall, we predicted that the benefits would outweigh the negatives or any negatives. We recruited 32 participants for the study, the vast majority of whom were users of the building, since we recruited them in the building itself. And just before I go on to say what we found, I'll show you a couple of examples of the type of dialogue we're talking about. So first of all, the task plus chat version. So you can see here that Alana welcomes the user and asks how she can help. And the user begins with a building-related inquiry. They get a suitable answer. And then, having heard what Alana can do, the user then initiates some social dialogue on the topic of music. Alana is able to express a preference on the topic and then encourages the user to talk some more about it, at which point the newsbot is taking over to further the conversation. In the task-only version of the system, there's none of that capability. So again, Alana welcomes the user and asks how she can help. Here the user's asking, how do I get to the digital lab? They are given directions. And Alana, in this condition, also explains to the user what she can do. It reminds them of what the system can do. But in this case, the messages are always specifically related to building-related inquiries. So what did we find? Well, in terms of user attitude, we found that users were positive towards both versions of the system, but in fact, there was little difference between the two. The exception was that participants were significantly happier to talk to the task-only version following repeat use of the system. So that contradicted our expectations. And in terms of explicit preference, there was a tendency for participants to prefer the task-only version, although this was not significant statistically. So again, that wasn't what we were expecting. When asked for the reasons for the choice, those who preferred the task-only version in the main said it was because it was more direct. 40% referred explicitly to the chat features in a negative way, with 30% specifying the fact that they were in public or the grid building as being part of the issue. Amongst those who preferred the task plus chat version, on the other hand, the majority did so precisely because of the chat features, saying, for example, it was more fun, more intelligent, I could talk about more things. And interestingly, across both preference groups, just over 20% said that the task plus chat version should advertise its capabilities less. In terms of dialogue quality, our predictions were correct. The mean task completion was equally high in both conditions. And as far as conversational efficiency goes, we were partly right. The task plus chat condition took significantly longer than the task only system by an average of 49 seconds. However, this was despite a similar number of turns. We were slightly surprised to see the relatively high number of turns in the task only condition, with a mean of nearly 7 compared to a mean of nearly 8 for the combined system. So closer inspection showed that this was due to what we've called off-task grid inquiries. So these are other inquiries relating to the building that users asked of their own accord and that were additional to the tasks we'd supplied them with. And they included things like, are there any showers in the building? In the task-only condition, 36.6% of responses were specific to the tasks that we had given. But there was a further 33.4% that were these other types of inquiry relating to the building. In the combined task plus chat version, due to the availability of the chat features, there were 14.3% of responses were on social topics. But again, these were outweighed by the other inquiries relating to the building. And in fact, just 12 participants engaged in social chat, with 4 of those participants accounting for the majority of the chat responses. So there was relatively low uptake of the option to chat. When we removed those who had chosen to engage in chat from the analysis, we did, however, still find the same pattern in conversational efficiency. So it still was longer than the task-only version. So this led us to the conclusion that the duration was longer, not because people were chatting to the system on social topics, but because of the longer conversational drivers that it employs, advertising both the building specific and the conversational capabilities. In summary then, we wanted to ask the question, what are the benefits, if any, of combining social chat with task-based dialogue in this setting? And in fact, we found little evidence of benefit, although it's important to note that we also found little evidence of harm. Attitudes to both versions of the system were positive, but there were some negative effects on conversational efficiency. A key result is that a minority of participants chose to chat, with the majority making additional inquiries relating to the building instead. And it's an interesting result because it shows a willingness on the part of the users to engage with the system and talk freely with it, but in a way that's influenced heavily by the context in which they're experiencing it. And comments from the interview supported this, suggesting the public setting is a factor. Other possible factors in the low uptake of social chat was that in our desire to emphasize the breadth of Alana's capabilities, we may have placed too much emphasis on suggesting topics that weren't immediately relevant. And also, while advertising the system capabilities in the way that we did is a simple way to encourage people to chat without impeding those users that are only interested in task dialogue, it's not a very natural way to engage. So in conclusion, we found that conversational AI for a public setting is very different to the home. This highlights the importance of evaluating in context, but our research also sounds a note of caution on employing social chat in these types of systems. So for anyone considering conversational AI in professional buildings, we'd suggest that the primary focus remains on task completion. Some users are keen to chat and value this, but it should be offered sparingly. And users are less willing to discuss social preferences in this context. So the focus of any chat that you should introduce should initially at least be on topics relevant to the shared space or the physical context. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening, and I'm happy to take any questions.